Welcome to the Supreme Love Project, where you learn to love supremely so you can live supremely. This is a Power Hour. This is the place where you can get the information you need to heal the terrors in your soul and launch a revolution in your life. Get ready. Take notes. Now, here's your host, Janine Staples.
Hello, everyone. This is Janine Staples. Welcome back to the Supreme Love Project. You are at Cold Crush. This is a teleseminar that is going to support your efforts, your intentions in taking out some of the intimacy barriers that you have built up over time because of the disappointments, the struggles, the sufferings, and the terrors that you've experienced in your life. We are seeking to heal those terrors in your soul so that you can launch a revolution in your life. And today, I have with me the one and only Troy Spry from ExclusiveThoughts.com. He is a blogger extraordinaire. He's a focus on supporting women and also couples in their quest to build more intimacy, to build more connection, more closeness, and to take off some of the shackles that we've built over time. So Troy, welcome to the Supreme Love Project. I'm glad that you're here.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here as well. Yeah,
this is going to be a great conversation. So, Troy, I perused ExclusiveThoughts.com. My team found you. I'm so glad that they did. We need more men in the project, and I want to ask you to just introduce yourself to the community and let us know, how did you get into this work, and what's your story?
Absolutely. So, like I said, I'm Troy Spry from ExclusiveThoughts.com. I am a speaker, author, blogger, and a certified life and relationship coach. So that's kind of got a myriad of things that I do. How I kind of came to this work really was I've always been a writer, right? Even, growing up, I was kind of the guy who would write poems and letters to people's girlfriends for them, right? So I was kind of that guy. And so, when I graduated college, I got a real corporate job and I kind of got too busy to write, and so I stopped. Well, my mother passed away back in 2011, from multiple sclerosis. And so something told me to revisit that passion and just write about it. And so my first blog ever was called A Mother's Love, right? And so I wrote that blog, I sent it out to the social media platforms, and people wrote me back, and they said, I really enjoy your writing. I really can relate to what you're saying. And so I was like, okay, that's great. And so I started writing about what came natural to me, which was relationships and what people were going through, because everybody would always come to me for advice and things like that. And so suddenly, I started getting questions from people, asking me about how would you handle this situation? How would you handle that situation? And I would answer, and people would say, I followed your advice, and this happened. And so one day I was on Twitter, and I just saw someone that was a relationship coach. And I was like, okay, what's a relationship coach? And I looked it up. I talked to the guy. We met up. He told me about his journey. He actually told me how to get certified. And so the rest is history. So from that writing came opportunities to write for bigger publications. From that came my book. From that came clients. And now I'm kind of here. And my whole why behind what I do is, better people creates better mates, which creates better relationships, which creates better communities. So that's why I do what I do, because I feel like it's so much bigger than me, and we got to have these conversations in order for all of us to get better. So that's kind of my story. That's how I'm here.
Yeah, that's a powerful story. I believe that as well. In the Supreme Love Project, we talk about healing ourselves to heal the world. So what you just traced, that line of continuum, is what I believe in as well. As soon as we become centered and anchored and whole in ourselves, and we come home to ourselves, we are able to go out and partner with ourselves and partner with other people in more generative, powerful, loving, appreciable ways, with boldness, with fearlessness, with power. That's kind of uncommon in humanity in this day and age. So I really want to jump in. We're talking about intimacy with Cold Crush. We're talking about breaking down and melting away some of that tundra of isolation, of disillusionment, of pain and suffering that especially women, but all people, of course men are involved in this conversation too, all people experience when they have felt emotional neglect, when they felt abused, when they felt abandoned or rejected, when they feel less than credible as a lover. And so let's talk about that. What are some of the primary ways that we build up? I think an awareness of how we build those things is really important. So Troy, talk to me about what your knowledge base is around how women and men actually build up those boundaries, those barriers, and those blocks to true intimacy?
I mean, I think it comes down to experiences, right? When I say experiences, I mean, not only what have we experienced with mates that we've had or people from our past, but also what experience have we seen growing up, right? So what are the things that we saw mom and dad do, or just mom, or just dad? Did we see mom hurt all the time? Did we see, dad frustrated all the time? Also, if we're in relationships, when we grow up, did we trust someone with our heart and then they broke it? Right? Were we vulnerable to someone and then they took advantage of it? Did they break us when we thought they would build us up? So these all become barriers, and what we do is we get hardened, right? And I think one of the biggest blocks to creating intimacy in the future is a lack of forgiveness, right? Because people always talk about forgive, but it's a process. And I think sometimes what ends up ultimately happening is we have these walls built up. People say forgive, but yet we don't know what that process looks like. And I think a lot of it has to be conscious. So when I say forgiveness, what I mean is, if someone hurt you in the past, instead of holding on to that, not only speaking it, saying that I forgive you, right, but also living it. And so when you're seeing them, when you catch yourself harboring hard feelings, talk to yourself and step back and say, I shouldn't allow myself to feel this way, right? Because they have power over me now, because I'm allowing them to change my mood, to shift my attitude about what I see in the future. So I think that's one big key that's a block to intimacy, is lack of forgiveness for what happened to us in the past.
That's really powerful. This morning I was doing, I talk about deep excavation of the soul. It's a soul clearing. It's a methodology that we do in the Supreme Love Project, and there's a way to go into your somatic space, into your body, which is where we keep emotional energy, and do clearing from past hurts and abuses so that you can up-level and develop your energetic frame and your consciousness to a really new realm. And one of the things I was working myself through this morning is a lack of forgiveness that I found in my subconscious, that I found in my body, that I didn't even know was there. So, Troy, what you're talking about is really, really key. It's a very powerful idea that I want the women who are listening and the men who are listening to write down. I would definitely agree. One of the number one barriers to intimacy is a lack of forgiveness. What I realized in my clearing just this morning was that if I didn't forgive myself in this area and reconcile myself, I would not be able to more fully develop the trust that I need, trust and faith in myself to make new choices, to create a new space, to build new bridges, to make new realities plain for me. And so it does definitely start with forgiveness. That's a really powerful idea.
I agree 100%. I mean, I think another big block to that intimacy is, and you probably see this in people as well, is this comparison thing, right? And so we compare, ourselves to what the world says we should be, or what our mates might have dated in the past, or we compare ourselves to what we see on social media, whatever it might be. And so I can't truly be intimate if I'm not comfortable with who I am and what I have to offer, right? And so I think that blocks intimacy as well with people.
Yeah. I think about social networking, and I think about the platforms that we use. So we have so many: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Reddit. I mean, there's so many ways that we keep track of each other. And we, we might theoretically want to use some of those platforms to build intimacy, to build connection, to get to know people better. The issue comes into effect, like you said, Troy, when people use those places just to compare, to compare themselves with other people, to compare themselves, or their partner with someone else's partner. That's a real trip. I've seen that, where women will come into the project and say, well, I could have done better. I could have been with this person or that person. And I'll say, how do you draw that conclusion? I'll say, well, look at this person's life, on Facebook, on Twitter, Instagram. They're going to all these beautiful, wonderful places. They're always smiling. And we have to remind ourselves, I need to remind the sisters in the project that those are highlight reels. And we talked about this, Troy, before we got on this call. Those are just highlight reels. That's a trick. That's a trap.
Yes.
That is a serious distraction away from the reality that we're living in today. So what are some of the ways that we can stop the comparison game? How can we get out of that spin cycle?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's, number one, it's having this conversation that we're having, and it's creating consciousness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Create the consciousness that I'm doing it, right? That I'm sitting here scrolling all day, smiling at what other people have going on and comparing myself. When really, if I take evaluation of my life, I have a lot of good things going on as well. So why am I so consumed? I think the other thing is we have to limit our exposure to social media. I mean, sometimes we literally sit all day looking at it. I mean, and when you do that, you take all the focus from you and put all the focus on other people. And when you do that, I mean, ultimately what ends up happening is you become envious, right? So what happens is you compare your real life to their highlight reel, and that's not fair to you at all. Right. You know, and I think take an inventory of, you know, even if you're with somebody, right, and saying, hey, why did I get with that person in the first place? And what was it about them that attracted me to them? What was it about them that attracted them to me? Right? And so start taking that kind of self-evaluation and saying, I have a lot of good stuff going on as well. I can't let other people's life dictate how I feel about me. You know, I think that's really some of the keys to it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So we have on the table, you know, the lack of forgiveness. Mm-hmm. We have on the table, just this tendency to compare. Mm-hmm. What are some of the other ways that we build up these intimacy blocks that cause us to move away from ourselves, move away from other people, create distance, so that, you know, we find ourselves isolating? What's another way?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what we also tend to do is we tend to make the world really small to ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I say that is we got hurt by one person, right? And so now everybody else is gonna hurt us. So then next thing you know is you don't embrace vulnerability to anybody else because of this one person out of the millions of people in the world. This one person allows you to shut down your whole emotional being because of what they did to you. Right? And sometimes I think the biggest key is acceptance. Accept the fact that this person hurt you, right? Or accept the fact that it didn't work out with this person. And then say, you know what, that can't stop me from trying to pursue something else. It's kind of like, I mean, if you think about anything else in life, right? We have this thing called perseverance, right? We say you start a business and it fails. Most people go try to start another one, right? We kind of work through, you know, if we made a bad grade in school, you might get an A on the next one. You try harder. But sometimes in love and intimacy, we tend to just shut down altogether and we say, I'm never going to be vulnerable again. And intimacy at its core is just closeness, right? It's closeness to someone. And so if you put up the wall against vulnerability, then you can never have next level love. And then you're really just cheating yourself out of the good things that come with love. So we always look at the bad things. I mean, but what about all the great things that come with having a loving partner that cares about you, that's close to you, that sees beyond just your flaws, right? So I think that's what we have to do is we have to embrace vulnerability and say the world is bigger than just this one person or these two people that hurt me.
Right. Yeah, so it's shutting down, it's giving up. But also I like what you said about not accepting. One of the things that I learned from my research on women's terror in love, those relational and social terrors that we experience, the microaggressions and the macroaggressions, is a tendency to stay stuck. It's to ruminate and stay and go over the story again and again and again and again. What we end up doing is we're creating evidence. We're creating evidence that we're not worthy of love. We're creating, and it's really not real evidence. It's not true. It's not accurate. But because we are stuck and ruminating on the past and not accepting, like you said, that it wasn't the right fit, it didn't work out, we're creating proof and evidence around that experience that says, see, I'm not capable of love. See, I'm not capable of, true intimacy. See, all women are like this, or see, all men are like this. I really like what you're saying, Troy, in terms of thinking around jumping out of that stuck position, jumping out of that ruminating position, because what ends up happening in that position is we are practicing non-acceptance of a reality, a higher truth reality, and we're creating a lower truth reality. It's really constructing a lower vibration, a vibration that's really based in lies and misperceptions, the lie that we're not enough, that there's something wrong with us, that we're not capable of having a healthy relationship with ourselves or with other people. The higher truth, if we come out of that sin cycle, if we can come out of that and accept that the relationship that didn't work out was a gift to us, it was a lesson for us, it was a benefit to us, it was helping us to show us maybe some areas where we need to grow, maybe helping us to show us the type of tendencies and practices that actually are healthy as opposed to the ones that are not healthy. If we can come out of that stuck position, that ruminating position, and accept a higher truth, I agree that the possibilities for intimacy are far greater.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think one thing to just add to that is a big part of acceptance is ownership, right? Right. Is the ownership piece where we say, you know what, it didn't work, but what role might I have played in this? Because with ownership comes empowerment, right? If it's always just the other person's fault, then that's not as empowering as saying, you know what, I made a choice on this, and this. I could do this better this way next time, right? That's a lot more empowering than saying, well, they just did me wrong. Right? And I think that's another part, is ownership of what our role was in the situation. Because then we leave from being victims and we become victors. Right? Right. We have a whole other level of empowerment. So I agree with you too.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about your community and your work. I want to hear from you a little bit about men. Since we have a couple of men who come through the Supreme Love Project, so I'm happy to have you here, brother. So when I get brothers in any Supreme Love Project, we've had Hot Health in 2016, 2017. We've had now Cold Crush 2016, 2017. I'm thinking, what can you say to us about men? What are some of the relational and social terrors that men experience? What I talk about in the project is that the white supremacist patriarchy, that is the way that racism, sexism, and misogyny socialize us into our identity as lovers, is an equal opportunity offender. Men are hurt as much by hyper-patriarchal and hyper-masculinist perspectives as women are. There are ways that men are trained to shut down. There are ways that men are trained to disassociate from themselves, disidentify from themselves. And it's important for us as a community of women to take those factors into consideration when we're doing our healing and when we're doing our building. So talk to us a little bit about the ways that men suffer so that we can understand, you know, how we're all cooperating in the mess and get out of it.
Oh, I mean, I think this is a great topic because, I mean, as far as my work goes, one of the things I pride myself on is trying to help men have a platform and give them permission to feel again, right? And so when I say that, you know, growing up as a boy, or even when you're a little boy, you're not really told that you can feel, right? The little boy falls, scrapes his knee, it hurts. His dad or mom says, get up and stop crying, right? You know, he feels hurt about a bad grade or something. He's upset about it. They say, hey, suck it up. And so you're socialized to really downplay your feelings all the time. But how does that benefit us when we grow up and we got to try to love somebody, right? We got to try to be vulnerable to somebody. And so what ultimately ends up happening is men start to create their identities based off of some of the misogynistic things, like, you know, how much more money do I make than you? How can I dominate you as far as, you know, lead you and tell you what to do because I bring in the money, or, you know, I'm stronger than you. Instead of saying, you know what, we should be partners in this thing together. Right? I should be able to love you and be vulnerable with you just like you should be me. And so I think that's what happens to men so much, and it hurts us in love. And so we have these barriers built up to our intimacy where we can't say how we feel. I hear so many ladies that come to me for coaching, they're like, why won't he just tell me how he feels? When I'm like, well, you got to understand from a man's point of view, the minute I start expressing feelings, that's correlated with weakness, right? And so my whole life I've been told that that's a weakness. And so now I'm in a relationship and you want me to be soft and open. And that's not an easy transition for men. So I think, a lot of times for ladies, understanding that will help them become a little less frustrated with men when it comes to how they feel. Because a lot of times men, what we do is we show our feelings on our actions. It's how I treat you. It's how, the things I do for you. It's in those things. And so understanding that sometimes you might not get all the words that you want, but you may be getting the actions that represent the words. And I think that helps bridge some of that gap. But I do think men need a permission to feel. And I always say this, when I came out the womb and when you came out the womb, we both cried, right? We were both human and we experienced that human emotion. And I don't think, men should be taught to not feel anything. I think we should be taught emotional intelligence, right? And learning how to not always allow our emotions to dictate our behaviors. But I do think we have to be allowed to feel. And I think for ladies out there, the way they can help in that is making it a safe place to do so, right? Making it a safe place to do so, to where when he does express that emotion, that it's not seen as weakness or said, hey, you sound soft, or you weak because, you say these things, instead of doing that, saying, you know what, I understand how you feel. Let's talk about how we can fix it. That creates intimacy, right? That creates closeness if I can trust you with my feelings. So hopefully that helps a little bit. What do you think?
I think it does. I really do. As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about some of the concerns and the struggles that Women at Supreme Love Project have communicated to me and with each other. And you hit it in that last descriptor. It's about getting frustrated. With partners who, and this is of course for heterosexual couples. I don't want to alienate any of the couples or the individuals who don't identify as heterosexual. But I think if you're not straight, think about this in terms of anyone, any person that you feel is emotionally stunted or underdeveloped or just out and out an emotional liar, someone who does not disclose what it is they're really thinking and feeling. And specifically for straight couples, the complaint is, why do I have to do it? Like a woman might say in the Supreme Love Project, why do I have to be the one to make a man feel safe? And I think a part of what you're saying, Troy, is that because the socialization that we are accosted with raises a lot of boys to be men who are emotionally immature, who are emotionally repressed, or who are emotionally just violent, who don't know how to express any emotion that is tender, for fear that will emasculate them or detract from their credibility. And so for a lot of women who come to the Supreme Love Project or any space where they determine that they need coaching to come out of a spin cycle of pain or suffering, they're already tired and they're really looking for someone to just carry the load. And I understand that. However, I would coincide with what you're saying, Troy, and say to the women who might be frustrated at that last comment, or why do we have to create the safe space? Why do we have to, model the practice or help a man to feel confident in sharing with us? We have to do everything. If you're in that space right now and you're sort of like turned off even a little bit by what Troy and I are discussing, think about it this way. If you've been relationally or socially terrorized, if you've suffered any level of microaggressions or macroaggressions in a relationship, whether it's with an intimate partner or, with a colleague or with a family member or with someone in society, what's probably happened is you've been trained to give your power away. You've been trained to not have appropriate boundaries and not actually declare yourself from a space of authority and not have an interior constitution that is anchored in your wholeness. You're not operating from your adult center. And if that's the case, then you don't necessarily want to be a healer. Maybe you don't want to be a model of emotionally powerful behavior. But if you can come back home to yourself as a woman, and if you can find and locate your feminine center, and if you can get rooted in that, you won't mind creating space because you'll be doing it anyway. And you won't mind modeling best practices for intimate partnership and for relating because you'll be doing it anyway. You won't be necessarily doing it to get a man or to turn a man around or get a man to look at you. You'll be doing it as an effect of your wholeness, as a manifestation of your personhood. It won't be about necessarily serving anyone else. It'll be about you being in the highest service to your creator. So think about it that way. Focus on yourself. And Troy, I would love to hear your thoughts about this. But my word to the Supremes who are listening, and to the people who are from Exclusive Thoughts who are listening, think about being whole in yourself, not to get anyone to like you, not to attract anyone to you, not to save anyone from their pain, not to coerce or manipulate anyone. Let's get rid of all of those frameworks. Let's get rid of all of those ideas, and let's just focus now on being a supreme lover, on being a divine healer, on being a bastion of intimacy that is anchored in a higher energetic premise, so that you draw in people who are healthy, or you draw in people who are ready to meet you where you are and go up to next levels. That way you don't feel resentful. That way you don't get pissed off. That way you don't feel like you have to carry the load or be the bigger person, and everybody else gets off scot-free, and everybody else gets coddled and gets cared for. No, just focus on you being you at your highest level and your highest form, and I think we can do away with some of that anger that a lot of women feel at the lack of intimacy in their lives.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100. I think you're on to something so real, right? Is because when women tend to act in their natural whole selves, I mean, it is so attractive. I mean, it is the thing that gravitates people towards. It's that energy, right? So it automatically makes a man feel like they can be comfortable around her and in her space, and that builds intimacy. Right? So I think you're exactly right. If you're your whole self and you're not putting up those intimacy walls because you've been hurt so much, and you're like, I don't want to carry that burden or that load, when you're acting in your true feminine identity, I mean, I really do think it's probably one of the most powerful things on earth. It is. Yeah. I mean, it's just something about it.
Absolutely. And the way to do that I've found in the Supreme Love Project is really to do deep soul excavations, to practice compassion, grace, like you said, forgiveness, real patience, and faith with oneself at the deepest level of wholeness. When a woman can do that for herself in her own space, in her own time, with a proper coach and in a loving community, she can go out into the world being the fullness of herself, living at the height of her energetic sphere, and doing all kinds of work, having gravitational pull for health, for wholeness, for peace, for laughter, for light, for beautiful sex, for amazing intimacy, for warm conversations, for emotional nakedness, for vulnerability. And she can do that effortlessly, without trying, without manipulating, without coercing, without convincing, without chasing, at all. I mean, that's not even actually, when a woman is operating her highest femininity, that's not even a part of her modus operandi. She's a siren and draws people to her. So.
Man, I mean, I always tell this story, people always ask me, what made your wife, the one, right? And I always tell people it didn't have as much to do with like physical appearance and things like that. It really was her spirit. Right? It was her aura. It was the way I felt around her. You know? And so I think that's the thing with a woman that's really operating in that space you're talking about. It's very evident. You can feel it.
Yeah. And more often than not, and this might be a little bit difficult to wrap our heads around at first, particularly if you're spinning in suffering right now. One of the key ideas behind what you just described, Troy, and what I've just described is that when a woman is in that space, she's really not thinking about a man. She doesn't really care.
Exactly.
She's not invested at all. When a woman is invested in a man, one man, or in the whole concept of masculinity, of attempting to be seen by a masculine gaze, to be accepted, to be sanctioned, to be validated, to be made credible, to be made visible, that is when she depletes her energy. When a woman is not thinking about men and is not thinking about masculinity, but is wholly consumed with the fullness of herself and her creator, and she is operating on that divinity of peace, of whole acceptance, of assurance, of power, and of grace, not thinking about a man, like not even conscious of dudes, like just, being super conscious and anchored in herself, that's when the bridges to intimacy get built.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, I agree with you 100%. I think oftentimes what people hear out there is that if I'm focusing on me, that means that I don't care about anyone else. And that's not the case, right? It's really, I'm focusing on me so that I can attract, and so that I will, even if I don't try, I will attract other people. I will attract other things into my life because I'm so focused on myself. So it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. It's kind of the point I'm trying to make.
Mm-hmm. And I think that it's also really helpful to repeat that idea over and over again. I encourage people to go back to this interview, listen to it from the beginning, and listen to it over again, because some of the concepts that, Troy, you and I are talking about right now create a real space of dissonance for women. What we've been raised to think is that we have to give. We have to put out. We have to think about other people. We have to focus on other people's needs, focus on other people's wants, focus, external, in order to be good women, in order to be good girls, in order to be, credible, in order to be worthy of love. And so what we're basically saying is turn your attention inward and upward. Turn your attention inward to yourself and upward to your creator. Don't look outside of yourself. Don't make horizontal vision. Make your vision internal and make it vertical. That way you can create openings for intimacy and power in building bridges for intimacy. And you can do some of that cold crush. You can melt away some of the barriers to intimacy that have been created if the vision is clear, if the vision is correct, if the vision is supportive. And I think one of the things, Troy, that some women in my community, particularly women who are Christian, and who follow Christian faith and Christian ideology, as I do, I'm a Christian, we get confused and we think, well, I was raised in my Christianity and my spiritual identity and beliefs to serve others, to give to others, to pour out for others, to chase behind others, to, gather resources for others, to contemplate and think about others. And so what we're suggesting, some women may resist it and say, oh, well, isn't that selfish for me to think about myself? Isn't that inconsiderate for me to build myself up? Isn't that short-sighted and petty for me to not spend my days and nights thinking about what's good for my man, or what's good for my best friend, or what's good for my mom, or good for my dad, or good for, any XYZ person that I might meet? This is my last question to you, how do we support women in overcoming this idea that focusing on yourself to build up your interior constitution is a selfish thing to do? How do we network out of that idea and create a framework to help us to understand that it's actually the most selfless thing we can do?
I think it really comes down to understanding this fact that when you are your best self, that is when you're ultimately better to other people, right? And so the more you take away from you and you take away from your energy and your power, you don't have any left to give to anyone else. So you always, that's why I encourage men all the time. If you are dating a woman and you have a woman, then you need to allow her to be able to recharge and take some of the things off her back so that she can become her best self, right? So that ultimately it only helps the relationship, right? Because the more she's stressed, the more she feels like she has no time for herself, or she's not allowed, to look out for herself, or that she's selfish she's selfish for being selfish, right? The more she feels that way, the less energy she's going to have to actually operate in that space that she's most powerful in, right? Which is that true feminine identity of hers. So I do think men have to also, change their mindsets about that and start saying, I need to be a partner in this and make sure that she's okay. Like, go to her and ask her, is she okay? Like, what does she need? And not just always be asking and taking, but be giving, right? Making sure I always say, make sure her cup is full too. right? Because so many women, I think, operate on a half full cup, or even maybe even not even halfway full. And so that's not nearly as powerful as operating in a full cup. And I think it helps everybody. It helps children. It helps the community. It helps the relationship. It helps a little bit of everything. So I think that's a big key to it, is just being conscious enough to say, you know what, it's not selfish for her to be selfish a little bit. You see, so I mean that's kind of my thoughts around it.
Yeah, and also I want to say to women, y'all know me. I am not down in the Supreme Love Project for having you think too hard about getting anybody. I don't want to leave you with that message. Troy, you gave us a beautiful description of what I call a masculine giver. And a masculine giver is the type of partner that I advocate for in the Supreme Love Project. I want women to be feminine receivers, and I want them to understand what a masculine giver looks like. And what I want to say to my sisters who are listening from all over the world is that you don't need to worry about finding a masculine giver. Masculine givers will find you. Your goal and your objective is to crush that cold. It is to do away with some of those barriers and those blocks to the intimacy that you need to fuel your heart and to fuel your systems. And the first person who's going to do that for you is not a man, and it is not anyone outside of you. It is you. And we can help you to learn to think about that by re-listening to what Troy and I just described, which is learning forgiveness, the number one block to intimacy, learning ownership and accountability, and learning acceptance. Acceptance of what is and what is truest and at the highest level of actuality for you. So Troy, this has been a wonderful interview. I really want to do what I do for everyone who's on the Cold Crush or Hot Health Seminar or any Supreme Love Project. I want to invite you to please leave our listeners with 3 parting gifts, 3 takeaways that they can write down right now, that they can go and look up, go think about, to really activate some action steps after this interview.
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I think this is a great conversation that's much needed. And so thank you so much for that opportunity. Absolutely. I think a few of the things I would like to leave just the listeners with is I think the first thing is, especially for people on this call, is trust yourself, right?
Yeah.
Trust yourself. And what I mean by trust yourself is that whole little thing called intuition that God gave you. You got to learn to trust that, but that's a process, right? That means that it's from little things to big, it's from little decisions to big decisions, right? Because when you trust yourself, you're empowered. And when you're empowered, you make better decisions. So trust yourself is the first thing. Number 2 is don't focus on finding the one, focus on being the one. Right? That's kind of that's been the basis of our whole conversation is what do I need to do with it, within myself to make myself the one, not for other people to want me, right? But so that I feel wanted, right? And so I think that's a big difference is, don't find the one, focus on being the one. And I think the last thing, and I always tell people this, is when it's right, it's easy, right? When it's right, it's easy. When it's right, it's easy. And I think we complicate dating and the love thing and the relationship thing, and we complicate so many things, and not understanding that when it's right, you'll trust yourself in it, right? You won't have to overthink it. You won't have to, take courses on it and see if it's the right thing. It'll just feel right. And if you trust yourself, which is the first piece of advice, then when it's right, it'll be easy. So those are the 3 things I would leave people with. Yeah,
that's super powerful. I like everything that you said, Troy. You've been fantastic. A wonderful guest to the Supreme Love Project's Cold Crush series. And we are definitely going to have you on again. I appreciate your time, your energy, your expertise, your community. You have been a blessing to me and to us, and I just want to say thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, everybody, listen up. You know what's going on, and you know how I end this. Listen to this message over and over and over again. Build the messages into your body. Heal the terrors in your soul. Launch a revolution in your life. Come to the Supreme Love Project Code Facebook group. Get some more support, some additional insights. Share your stories. Learn from other people's stories. Go to SupremeLoveProject.com. Get the resources you need that are free to help you to jumpstart whatever new intention you have set for yourself to be a whole and compassionate and loving Supreme lover. And I will see you next time on another edition of the Supreme Love Project. Bye-bye.
Thank you for participating in the Supreme Love Project. We're a division of Literacy for Life, LLC. Please visit thesupremeloveproject.com for more information about our products and services. Visit JanineStaples.com for more information about our beloved founder and president. And remember, take this message to heart and build it into your body. We'll see you next time, right here. The place to make love, not war, every day of your life.